Hello everyone, welcome back to Jikook Moments. What if the quietest moments actually hold the deepest stories? At BTS's second concert in Japan, not much was captured. There were no grand gestures, no standout interactions that immediately drew attention. And yet, within that limitation, a far more intriguing pattern began to emerge. The dynamic between Jimin and Jungkook felt increasingly stable, more mature, and carried itself effortlessly, without needing to appear like it was trying. A small touch during soundcheck, a barely noticeable response, and the way they kept in sync with each other, all of it seemed simple. But is it really that simple? Or is that exactly where the meaning is hidden? As the second concert in Japan unfolded, one thing became clearer. Jimin and Jungkook's interactions didn't decrease, they evolved. Where their closeness once appeared through more open gestures, it now felt more controlled, more subtle, yet ultimately more consistent when seen as a whole. Some people might feel there isn't much to observe, and that's understandable. Concert culture in Japan is different. Audiences tend to respect requests not to constantly film, allowing the experience to focus more on presence than documentation. As a result, only a small portion of moments gets recorded. But within those limited fragments, the smallest details stand out even more when carefully observed. One of the most interesting moments appeared during soundcheck. Unlike the main concert, which is structured and high-pressure, soundcheck is a more relaxed space. The members move more freely, with less performative weight. In this kind of setting, gestures tend to be more spontaneous and less filtered. That's why many see soundcheck as a small window into more natural dynamics. In one circulating clip, Jimin and Jungkook are seen standing close, practicing as usual. At first glance, nothing seems particularly special, just two people comfortably sharing the same space. But the core of the moment lies in a very subtle detail. Jungkook appears to be holding Jimin's wrist. At a glance, it could be dismissed as a casual touch. But upon closer observation, there's a different nuance. The movement seems intentional, even if it's wrapped in a relaxed impression. There's even a sense that Jungkook isn't just touching, he seems to want to hold on a little longer, as if there's an impulse to turn it into a fuller grip, or at least not let go immediately. Jimin's response adds another layer to the dynamic. He doesn't show an exaggerated reaction. There's no surprise or firm rejection. He simply releases the contact gently, then continues his activity as usual. Everything unfolds lightly, almost too subtle to register as a moment, unless you're paying close attention. This is where a broader pattern starts to appear. This isn't the first time Jungkook seems to seek or extend small physical contact, whether through hands, shoulders, or other simple gestures. There's a growing sense that he's becoming more comfortable expressing closeness directly, without overthinking how it might be perceived. On the other hand, Jimin often takes on a different role. He doesn't reject it, but he tends to regulate the rhythm of the interaction. Sometimes he lets the moment continue, sometimes he ends it in a very subtle way. This difference isn't a contradiction, it's a balance. Two different ways of expressing closeness that ultimately complement each other. Interestingly, all of this happens on a very small scale. No dramatic gestures, no explicit statements. And precisely because of that, each detail feels more genuine. These interactions aren't made to be seen, but they are still visible. And that's where their appeal lies. This also explains why so many people continue to pay attention to them. Not just because of what's visible on the surface, but because there's a sense that every small gesture carries a longer context. For some, this might seem like overanalysis. But for those who have followed their journey over time, these small patterns feel consistent and form a larger narrative. That said, it's important to keep perspective. Jimin and Jungkook are public figures. They're aware that even the simplest interaction can easily be taken out of context. This awareness creates an unspoken boundary in how they interact in public spaces. In Japan, the calmer atmosphere also plays a role. An audience focused on the live experience creates a different kind of energy. The pressure is still there, but not as intense as in other places. This may be one reason why some interactions feel more natural, even while staying within certain limits. Still, even in that setting, a small gesture can trigger big reactions. A brief touch, a glance, or simple proximity can spark multiple interpretations. This shows how much public perception shapes the narrative. In the end, the boundaries they maintain aren't a sign of distance, but of awareness. They understand how their actions can be perceived, which makes them more selective in expressing interactions. Yet what's interesting is that, even within those limits, they still manage to convey something that feels real. No big moments needed. No dramatic gestures required. Small details alone are enough to leave a strong impression. And maybe that's the essence, that the simplest things are often the most meaningful. Amid all the discussions, there's one thing that needs to be clarified rationally. Many circulating narratives go far beyond the facts. The situation itself is quite simple, but it becomes complicated when layered with interpretations that aren't always grounded. For example, Jimin returning to Korea earlier isn't unusual. In a group structure like BTS, differences in schedules are completely normal. Each member has individual commitments, personal projects, and priorities that may vary at any given time. They're not a unit that has to move together at all times. The same applies to the other members. Some have dense production schedules, others focus on personal projects, and some prioritize personal matters depending on the situation. This is part of a long-standing professional dynamic, not something new. The problem arises when this context is ignored. The gaps are then filled with speculation. Narratives like being left behind or growing distant begin to appear without strong basis. The pattern is often the same, taking a small detail and magnifying it into something that looks like a major issue. Another noticeable phenomenon is the double standard. When similar situations happen to other members, it's considered normal. But when it involves Jimin, the reaction is often different. This shows that some interpretations are shaped more by pre-existing perceptions than by actual facts. There's also a tendency to fill the absence of information with assumptions. Not every interaction is recorded, and not every moment is made public. But the lack of documentation is often mistaken for the absence of interaction, which then leads to inaccurate narratives. More concerning is how some narratives portray Jimin as passive. In reality, his career reflects independence, decision-making ability, and a strong awareness of his own direction. Objectively, the situation is simple. Each member has their own schedule, there are personal factors that aren't always publicized, and their relationship isn't defined by how often they appear together on camera. But this simplicity is often overshadowed by more dramatic narratives. On a more personal level, what Jimin has shared in interviews paints a more complex picture of himself. He describes his transition back to life after military service as something not entirely easy, a mix of unfamiliarity, adaptation, and self-reflection. This shows that the change isn't just about routine, but also about mindset and self-perception. That experience left a real mark. When he returned to the stage, he wasn't simply continuing from where he left off. He brought back a version of himself that had grown. Within the group, BTS remains a priority. But now there's a deeper awareness of the importance of growing as an individual. This isn't a shift, it's maturation. The ability to balance identity as part of a group and as an individual. His view on perfectionism has also evolved. He no longer sees it purely as pressure, but as something that can be managed. The drive to improve is still there, but it's now more directed and less driven by fear. His approach to music reflects this as well. He sees the creative process as a space for exploration, not just the final outcome. His background as a dancer remains a foundation, but it's now integrated in a freer way. Perhaps the most honest part lies in how he views public expectations. He understands that love from fans comes with pressure. Not every side of him can be fully understood from the outside, and some parts will always remain unseen. But instead of resisting, he chooses to adapt. He's learning to reduce the fear of trying, asking questions, and even failing. This is a crucial step in growth, not toward perfection, but toward a more complete understanding of himself. In the end, all of this points to one thing. Whether in small interactions on stage or in his personal journey, there is an ongoing process. Not always visible, not always explainable, but very real. And maybe we don't need big moments to understand something real. Because often, what matters most comes in the simplest forms. Small gestures, subtle responses, and consistency that only becomes visible when you truly pay attention. Amid all the interpretations that continue to grow, one thing remains clear. What exists between them isn't about how often it's seen, but about how these small moments keep appearing, repeating, and forming something that feels consistent. So, what do you think? Is this truly a quieter phase, or actually the most honest one? Share your thoughts in the comments, and see you in the next Jikook Moments.